Ken Monahan is here. He is a storyteller, but more importantly, he's also the former regional head of the Middle East and North Africa for Deutsche Bank. Okay, so that's serious. And he's here to tell us a fascinating story about a deal he attempted to engineer in Lebanon. So ladies and gentlemen, Ken Monahan, the Lebanon story.
So on the bright sunny morning of September 11th, 2006, I walked into a conference room overlooking the Mediterranean Sea in Beirut, Lebanon. Now, it's been a tough 3 months for Lebanon because the Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization slash political party, had been fighting a war against Israel for the preceding 3 months. And in the course of that war, the Israelis had tried and failed to invade southern Lebanon, but they had tried and succeeded in bombing the hell out of the transportation infrastructure throughout the whole of Lebanon. Now, this was good news for Hezbollah because no Arab army had ever successfully resisted the Israelis. So not losing was the same thing as winning for them, and they became very popular. But it was terrible news for the Western-leaning government of Lebanon because this was during the summer, their economy is tourist-based, and it wrecked the tourist season for them and was plunging a very indebted country into a deep recession. And so the person at the head of the table was the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Senora, and in my briefcase were two proposals. The first proposal was that we would take the Beirut airport that had been bombed by the Israelis, and we would lease it for 25 years, we would repair it, and all the income that the airport would generate, we would give to us and our investors, and we would write a check to them for $750 million right then. We were also willing to write them a check for $5 billion, conditional on them allowing us to take $5 billion of gold out of the Lebanese central bank, put it on a series of airplanes, fly it to London, deposit it in the Bank of England where they pay interest on gold. We would use the interest on the gold to sort of buy insurance in case the price of gold went down, and if the Lebanese double-crossed us, we would keep the gold. So I sat down there and I was about to sort of talk to Senora about all this, and you might be thinking to yourself, going to a war zone, asking to buy a bombed-out airport, and then flying $5 billion of gold through it, that sounds kind of like a harebrained scheme. And frankly, when I thought it up, I thought it was a harebrained scheme as well. And I didn't think my bosses would agree to it. But when I told them that we would make about 2% on each deal, which is quite a bit of money, they thought it was awesome. And they agreed, they picked up the phone, and they got the German government to put us in touch with Senora. And we went there and we sat down and we were about to have our meeting with them. And as I was sitting down there, I started thinking, like, how did I, a Roman Catholic from the south side of Chicago, find myself trying to inject billions of dollars into a civil war between the Shia and Sunni halves of Lebanon? Now, this had all started about 3 months before, when all of my coworkers, who were Arabs in the Middle East, they don't really draw too sharp a distinction between Israel and the United States. And I was the only American around, so I was the closest they could get to Israel, and so they were always harassing me about what a terrible thing this was. And it's been on day and night, all day. And one day I just got sick of it. I'm like, I'm done. No one is allowed to complain to me about the evils of Lebanon or Israel, who is not themselves willing to lift a finger to help the people of Lebanon. And this resulted in total silence. Because as a Roman Catholic from the south side of Chicago, I just said the most Islamic thing there was to say on the subject. And it resulted in a ton of silence for me because what I had said, intending to make people be quiet, then committed me to actually solving this problem. And so I started trying to solve it, and the more I looked at it, the more I understood this is a really deep problem. Okay? Because what I realized was the moment that the shooting war between Israel and Hezbollah would end, a money war between Hezbollah and the Lebanese state would ensue. Right? So as I mentioned, right, for the United States and for Israel, Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. For Lebanon, it's a political party. And as a political party, they can win elections. And if they win elections, they take over the state. And at the end of the war, Lebanon was devastated. Okay? Hezbollah was very popular because they had not lost to the Israelis, and they also had a ton of money flowing into their coffers from Iran. So Hezbollah, in addition to being a terrorist organization, is backed by Iran. The price of oil went from $40 to $80 that year, so Iran had plenty of money, and they were shoveling it all into Hezbollah. And Hezbollah was making friends all over Lebanon, financing the reconstruction of the state. Now, our team, the Western-leaning government of Lebanon, They had a totally different ball of wax. They had worn out the welcome mat at the Western creditors. And the reason for that was that the former Prime Minister of Lebanon, Rafik Hariri, owned a construction company. And at the end of the Lebanese Civil War, he decided they should rebuild the country, and so he borrowed $30 billion in the name of the Lebanese taxpayers, and he hired himself to build it. And he made an absolute fortune until he was assassinated in March of 2005. But he made a lot of money for his family, but stuck the bill to the Lebanese taxpayer. And the Lebanese taxpayer was not too happy about this. And they defaulted not once, but twice. And Fuad Senor, the man I was meeting, had engineered multiple restructurings. And so basically, no one would lend any money to the Lebanese taxpayer, which is why the schemes I came up with were harebrained. Notice that if we lease an airport and borrow money against gold, in the event that the Lebanese taxpayer doesn't like it, we keep their gold. And so this is why I flew there to Lebanon to meet the Prime Minister and pitch in these harebrained schemes. And what I was basically trying to do was give him weapons in the war of money that he was going to have to fight with Hezbollah. And he sat there and he listened to me, and I gave him a presentation, and it had little rings on the side that bound it. And he was reading it, and he closed it. He just sort of was, fooling around with the little rings. And I was giving him my speech, and I'd worked for months on it. And he was basically ignoring me. And I'm thinking, this is crazy, right? The guy has no time for me. And I'm here, about to write checks for $5.75 billion to the guy, right? And he really needs the money. And I know he really needs it. What is going on here? So he closes the thing when I'm done, and he says, so, once you bought an airport, what are you going to do with it? And I thought this was a ridiculous question, because the question isn't what am I going to do with your airports? What are you going to do with my $750 million, right? And I thought for a minute, and in the meeting I was like, I should have fun with this, right? This meeting is obviously not going well. I should tell them that we're going to move it. We're going to name it after my dad, James B. Monahan, MD, Beirut International Airport. And I knew I'm not allowed to do that. That would not go well, and we will definitely not make our $90 million in fees on any of this if I insult the Prime Minister of Lebanon in our meeting. So I thought, let airports generate, we'll charge more for parking, and we'll get McDonald's and put it in there and charge them rent, and we'll probably charge more for landing fees, but you get $750 million today, our investors get paid back, we get fees, everyone wins, Hezbollah loses, what do you say? So he thought, I was not quite as very serious. So he thought about it for a second, he said, all right, well, here's the deal. The gold thing, that's out. Can't do the gold thing, right? Sorry, no. And the reason he couldn't do the gold thing is unusual, because during the Lebanese Civil War, there was an intense fight to see who would get to rob the Central Bank of Lebanon. And so all of the factions, right, they called a truce and they said, all right, here's what we'll do. We will declare the gold in the Lebanese Central Bank neutral. And they passed a rule that no one could ever sell or pledge the gold in the Lebanese Central Bank. Right, so money itself took a position in the Lebanese Civil War, and that position was neutrality. Right, so that's out. But this airport idea, I like that idea. All right, you need to talk to a guy named Pierre Gemayel. He's the head of the Higher Council of Privatization. And for us, and that's okay. That's 2% fits, $15 million to the good guys here. Okay, that sounds good. All right, but before I'll put you in touch with Pierre Gemayel, I need you to do me a little favor. I need you to fly to Singapore, and I need you to attend the World Bank meeting, and I need you to talk to all of the Lebanese creditors, and I need you to tell them how excited you are for both of these things. And I need you to not tell them I said no to the gold idea. I'm like, well, hey, if that's what it takes to make $15 million, we'll do it. So we got on a plane, we flew to Singapore, we met all of Lebanon's creditors, we told them, hey, look, the private sector, we're really into Lebanon. We love it. It's the best. Oh, this whole war thing, man, they'll bounce back, don't worry. They'll shovel money in there, hand over fist, don't worry, it's fine. All right, so we get back on the plane, fly back to Dubai, we meet Pierre Gemayel, and I don't know if you've ever tried to, buy a carpet or... The Arab world is not like the United States, right? You don't just say, hey, here's $750 million. They say, well, that's a starting point. So, because the Beirut airport is the national patrimony of the people of Lebanon. We can't just let it go for $750 million. No. Forget it, not gonna. But I'll tell you what, though. For $1 billion. That's the thing. The thing is, it's a psychological thing. The people of Lebanon will not let this go for anything less than a B in front of it. So we sort of gathered up the team, like, all right, can we come up with $1 billion? Well, maybe a 30-year lease, a 35-year lease. Okay, but like we're gonna have to ask for a lot of special little favors from you. We need maybe 2 McDonald's and like a bigger parking garage. So, but we agree $1 billion. We agree $1 billion with Pierre Gemayel, and like meanwhile, back at the ranch, like the Hezbollah have decided to force elections. Okay, and the way they force elections is they all quit the government, and they get the Maronite Christians to quit the government with them. So now they get to a point where all they need is 5 parliamentarians to leave Parliament in order to force elections that they'll probably win because we haven't gotten money in there yet. Now the tricky thing is there's a lot of ways for people to leave Parliament. 1, you can retire. 2, you can resign. 3, you can die. And Pierre Gemayel was a parliamentarian. And one day, Pierre Gemayel got up, got in his car with his bodyguard and his driver, drove out his driveway, and was rammed right in the side by a van filled with men with Kalashnikovs who jumped out, riddled his car with bullets, killed him, killed his driver, killed his bodyguard, and then they shot everyone on the street, got in the van, and drove off. And that was it. So I went to my boss at the end of this, and I said, we've been working on this for a long time. Obviously, this is a terrible tragedy, but there's $750 million in the wings here. What are we going to do about this? And my boss said, you're insane, right? Like, what are you thinking? It's over, right? Like, all we're bringing to the table is money. These guys are willing to bring the capacity to kill you to the table, right? They win, right? Money is not a weapon. It's over. They won. So I felt pretty bad about this, and that was it. And I thought they did win, but they didn't. Because in January of 2007, the Lebanese creditors gathered in Paris for Paris 3, and they approved, slightly on the basis of our willingness to commit private capital to Lebanon, to rescue Lebanon. They forgave a lot of debts, they injected a ton more money, the Lebanese state won, they fended off the challenge from Hezbollah, and they're empowered this very day. And later on I thought about that, and this is why Fouad Siniora, the entire time there, didn't care anything about what I said. Right? He knew what I didn't know. I thought this was a contest to see who could come up with more money. That it was a war of the actual thing, that money was a weapon, tool. Right? But what Fouad Siniora understood that we in the bank didn't understand was that it's not a weapon, it's not a tool, it's a symbol, it's a sort of an expression of trust and faith, right? And that's what actually carried the day, not us, not our money. The battle went not to the person with more gold, it went to the person who knew what it was for. Thanks.